Good evening, everybody. My name is Tess Parker. I'm the Director of Programs for the Anthroposophical Society in America, and we're so glad that you're joining us for this members event, a Michaelmas celebration called A Home for Spirit, the Michaelic impulse of the Schreinerei. So hopefully you've seen some of the resources we shared. If you haven't, that's quite all right. Let me stop sharing. But you'll want to check your email to receive a video tour of the Schreinerei, as well as a recording of Steiner's last lecture. So we'll get more into all of that, all the details about the Schreinerei in a bit. But first of all, just welcome, bring yourself here, get settled, and happy Michaelmas season. I hope that you had a celebration of your own last week on September 29th, the day of Michaelmas itself. I was very pleased to be at the Goetheanum on that day, and there was a big bonfire and a big sword hanging from the trees. It was very beautiful. So we'll get started. If you have a candle, please gather that now. We'll light it, and I'm going to pass to Angela to read an opening verse.
Hello, thank you, Tess. And I echo my welcome to everybody out there, both who are here live. It's 5 o'clock in Atlanta. And if you're watching the recording in the future, also greetings to you in the future. I'm going to read this passage from Rudolf Steiner. It's from, excuse me, Collected Works 26, the Michael letters. And I'm going to read a translation from Christopher Bamford that's on the back of this book. But I'm also going to put it in the chat in a different translation. But just so you know, the one I'm reading is from the back of the book. And the font is so tiny, I had to go get a magnifying glass. So I'm going to have to look down while I read it, but hopefully you will feel the warmth. The Michael age has dawned. Hearts begin to have thoughts. Enthusiasm no longer flows from mystical obscurity, but from the inner clarity that thought conveys. To grasp this is to receive Michael into one's soul. Thoughts that today seek to grasp the spirit must spring from hearts that beat for Michael as the fiery, cosmic prince of thought. Hearts that beat for Michael as the fiery, cosmic prince of thoughts. Thank you, Rudolf Steiner.
Yes, thank you, Angela, for bringing that. I hope it's a good reminder to tune into some of that spirit at this time of year. And really that phrase, hearts are beginning to have thoughts, really is a good resounding phrase to keep in mind at this time. To begin our session, I'll give a little overview. We will do some Eurythmy with Mary Ruud to open the space and move our bodies. And then we'll move into hearing from Dr. John Paull, calling from Tasmania. And he'll present some leading thoughts on the Schreinerei, this building, and we'll get more of a glimpse and a mood and a feeling for the history and the meaning of this building in the overall history and life spirit body of the Anthroposophical Society and movement. And then we'll have some time for Q&A. So if you have anything that comes up, we'll be able to ask John. And then we'll move into some breakout groups for about 10 minutes or so to connect with other members, and we'll close with Eurythmy. So I hope you can stay for all of that today. And yes, I did mention the video, and I just wanted to thank Katrina Hoven for filming that. It was really well done, and thank Esther Gerster at the Goetheanum for giving such a beautiful tour, thorough and very artful and graceful. She's so well spoken at these tours. So let us move into Eurythmy. I'm going to pass it over to Mary.
Thank you, Tess. Thank you, Angela. Yeah, let's stand up if you're ready. If you're ready to move, you can stand up. If you want to watch, that's fine too. But let's start with finding ourselves on the earth and finding our breath. So we're firmly on the earth, breathing in and out. So let's give that a chance for our body to breathe. If we've been sitting, we've been working. So let go into the space around you. Gather yourself. Let go into the. And as we breathe out with our arms and breathe in with our arms, we feel the counter movement. So as you go out, find your center. As you come in, feel big space around yourself. And now we're breathing like an orchestra, right? In breathing grace, may a twofold be. We breathe air in, we let it free. The in-breath binds, the out unwinds, and thus with marvels life entwined. So thanks to God when we are blessed, and thank her when she gives us rest. So I hope you're breathing and standing. And I was working with these images of Michael as the captain of the angels, Michael and the angels, and the inspiration from St. Paul of the warrior angel. So some images, we'll need some vowels. Need an ah and an o. We feel ourselves in an e. Angel, e, right? And then there's a special gesture that might be new to you, and it's the gesture of wisdom. It looks like this, wisdom. And you're covered with golden light, barely almost touching your head, and there's a helmet of gold covering your head. Think of that image. The gesture for wisdom in Eurythmy from Rudolf Steiner. So let's go to the images from Michael, and we'll say each image twice, and then we'll put it all together. So first we want to be strong and firm on the earth. Firmly on the earth I stand. I really feel the earth. Firmly, earth I stand. Michael's sword in our hand. I'll say we. Firmly on the earth we stand. Michael's sword in my hand. Put on armor of God. He bring it and put it on. Put on the armor of God. Cover yourself. Gird yourself with the belt of truth. Gird yourself with the belt of truth. Wear the shining shield of good. Put on your coat. Wear the shining shield of good. There it is, our head. Wears the helmet of wisdom. Head wears the helmet of wisdom. Peace through ourselves into our feet. Peace through ourselves into our feet, that we can walk with the angels of Michael. So these pictures, they come from the how Paul spoke of that, of arming ourselves with goodness to build peace, what the world needs most. So let's picture ourselves as warriors for the good. Firmly on the earth we stand, Michael's sword in our hand. Put on the armor of God. Build the belt of truth. Wear the shining shield of good. Head wears the helmet of wisdom. And peace we let stream through ourselves into our feet. So we walk among the angels of Michael. One last time, strong we feel, firm on the earth we stand, Michael's sword in our hand. Put on the armor of God. Gird yourself with the belt of truth. Wear a shining shield of good. Let our head be the helmet of wisdom. And let peace stream through our being into our feet. So we walk among the angels of Michael. To end, just feel ourselves back in space. Earth is firm, earth below. Light shining from above. We find ourselves in balance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. I feel like I just sheathed myself with important virtues and strength. That was very, very good picture, imaginative movement there. Yeah.
Thanks.
So, yes. So now I'll bring John Paull on. We had the pleasure of first being introduced to a research paper of John's and then tracking him down in Tasmania and him agreeing to speak with us and be with us. And I just think that's such a beautiful representation of, you know, wisdom working or spirit research working to find someone's work and to connect with them that way and to have that living research connection. So I'm glad that we found you, John, and we'll also be sharing some of your, I think you have on our page, we have links to some of your published research papers, which are public domain, people can access them. So I'm sure people will want to do that after they hear from you. So I will leave. I'll leave now. I'll pass it to you. And thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Angela. That's Tess. That's great. So we're talking about the Schreinerei today, and you possibly have seen this book, and it's all about the architecture of Dornach. But curiously, this book leaves out one building, and that's the Schreinerei. And we're going to remedy that somewhat today. And I hope you're going to get. Can you see the screen?
It's not shared yet, actually. So
I'll
have to go back to. Do you have it up on your screen?
I have it up on my screen, so you probably should be able to switch it on.
So if you go to your controls at the bottom of Zoom, a green arrow, share screen, and then you'll choose the exact window that you want to share, and it should go right up.
Okay, so just bear with us then.
Oh
Is
yeah,
that good?
these things happen. Oh, perfect. Yeah, that was great.
Perfect?
Thank you.
All right. Okay. So, so welcome everybody. We're talking about the Schreinerei, and it's the shed of Dr. Rudolf Steiner. So we have a simple Anglo-Saxon word for Schreinerei, shed. And thank you to Tess and the team for organizing this presentation and today. Now, beginning with homework. Wow, I didn't know they were going to give me homework. Yes, Esther Gerster has produced a beautiful virtual tour in conjunction with this talk, and it's on Facebook, facebook.com, and you may already have the link. I hope you've got the link. Maybe you've followed it. I recommend it to you. And before we leave this homework slide, have a look at the back, the panorama at the back. And what we see is the panorama of the Schreinerei. The Schreinerei is a conglomeration of buildings, beginning on the left with the big barn, let's call it. Then the next building is, let's call it the small barn. And then it's the studio. And then you have above Esther's head is the high studio, imaginatively named. And then the lean-to on the right, which was used for Eurythmy in days gone by. And this is the one time where you're going to see the whole panorama. So just keep that image in mind. Now, Rudolf Steiner, as you know, he was a man with a vision. He came to Dornach with a vision, and it was mostly a vision of the Goetheanum, and because he'd been frustrated elsewhere. But in the Swiss area, his imagination, it fired his imagination. And so his vision expanded to fill the space. And on the Dornach Hill, he had a lot of space. And so his vision expanded to a school of spiritual science, a community of anthroposophists. So the idea was come to Dornach, build a house, build an anthroposophic looking house so that it was obvious that you were part of this community. And also Dornach and the Goetheanum could be the headquarters for anthroposophy. Now the Schreinerei, this is it on a sunny day. It means carpentry workshop in German. It means shed in English, more or less. And it's the first building of the Dornach Hill. So there's a man with a block of land. What does he think? What do I need on this block of land? Well, let's begin. Let's build a shed. And this is exactly what Rudolf Steiner did, and it's what many people would do. But it's a big shed. And why a shed? Well, why a shed for Rudolf Steiner is the same as why a shed for anybody. It gives you space. You've got a block of land. You don't want to wander around in the rain, or the sun for that matter, maybe. So it gives you space. It gives you a roof. It allows you to make stuff, to store stuff, to get together, to have a party. You ever had a party in a shed? Yes, probably. Have you ever retreated to a shed just for a little bit of peace and quiet? Yes. And if you've got a shed, you probably do. It's probably got stuff in it, and you've probably made stuff. So Rudolf Steiner's shed is the same as everybody else's shed in some senses, in terms of the function at least. Now, here's where it looks a little bit different. This is the inside of that first barn, the first of those buildings. And it's rather surprising, is it not? It looks quite beautiful already. And you see the brilliant timber work of the carpenters in getting that those trusses, those parabolic timber trusses. So very unlike a shed, a normal shed when you get inside, or very unlike a barn or a sheep shed, as we would have here. And maybe you can look at this and you think, well, maybe this was the beginning of Rudolf Steiner's falling out with the right angles, because there's not too many right angles here. You see all these curved shapes. It's a very dull, drab kind of shed on the outside, but inside you've got this magical timber work. The building begins in 1913. So this is the very beginning of anthroposophy in Dornach. It's an ugly duckling. And it's still an ugly duckling, by the way. It hasn't turned into a beautiful swan, and I don't expect it will anytime soon. However, it's unprepossessing. That's kind of a polite way of saying that it's an ugly duckling. Gunther said it was temporary, and Gunther should know because it was intended as temporary because he was there at the beginning. And he was the head of the School of Natural Sciences. And Assia described these buildings as wooden barracks. And this is quite close to the wartime, so wooden barracks were on people's minds at the time. And Assia did the glass, and so she was there, so she should also know. Now, the conjoined buildings of the two barns, the conjoined buildings to the barracks are the Atelier, the studio, which is the one pretty much first to the left, and then comes the high studio, and then comes the lean-to on the far right. So you can see, like so many sheds, it wasn't exactly thought out in a single thought. Otherwise, it would have looked very different. But that high studio is 1914. So, and the first barns are 1913. So it's fairly contemporaneous, all of it. Now, what are we doing in Dornach? What was Rudolf Steiner doing in Dornach? Well, he started not in Dornach, as we all do. We start somewhere. So he started in Munich with this idea of a build, of a Goetheanum. He called it a different name. There was a building society. There was an application for building. And then what happens with applications for building, as many of you will know, is you get rejected. And you can go through an iterative process of I modify it, have a look at it, no, have a look at it, no, have a look at it, no. He didn't go through that iterative process. He just, he had already been to Dornach. And there were also all sorts of other things happening in his life. The Theosophy Society were about to throw him out. He was thinking about starting the Anthroposophy Society. This is all about 1912 to 1913. So anyway, he takes this idea and moves it to Dornach, and this is 1913. And so you might think, well, that's unlucky that he was rejected in Munich, but in fact, that was incredibly lucky. He made that luck, though, because if you had a crystal ball in 1912 or 1913 in Munich, you would see in your crystal ball that there's a war coming, but then after that, there's the Nazis coming. Then there's a ban in Anthroposophy Society in 1935. There's a ban on all Rudolf Steiner books in Germany in 1935. And then there's the Second World War, and then the German cities are bombed. So if you had that crystal ball, you would think, wow, that is incredibly lucky that we can't build in Munich, so let's go somewhere else. Let's go to Switzerland. And Switzerland happens to be neutral, so it wasn't affected by the First World War and by the Second World War in the sense that it wasn't bombed and it wasn't part of the military operations. So Rudolf Steiner ends up in Dornach, and we're going to end up in Dornach right now. And let's just zoom in on what it looks like currently. On the hill is the Goetheanum. The Goetheanum is the second Goetheanum, the one that you see here. But immediately on the right is what I want you to see, and that's the Schreinerei, a big shed. There are not many famous buildings that have a big shed next to them. And you have to think, the Goetheanum is one of the great buildings of the world. But here, right next to it, is a big shed. And if you can think of some great buildings with a big shed next to them, please let me know. But I couldn't think of any. Now, we zoom in a little bit, and there is this, you can see the Schreinerei. So it's so close. It's only a few paces away from the Goetheanum. And you can wonder, given that the Schreinerei was all timber, how come it didn't burn? It got lucky in that fire. The Goetheanum, as you see it there, is in the same location as the original Goetheanum, Goetheanum 1, which burned to the ground. And that building was of the Schreinerei was so very close. And at the back, before we leave this picture, you can see Rudolf Steiner's first adventure into building with concrete, and that's the boiler house, that flamboyant looking weird building just your top left. Now, 1914, already in 1914, this was quick. Came in 1913, it's under construction, but it's more than under construction. This is the first Goetheanum. It's under construction in the sense that you can see how the building, you can get a good idea of how the building is going to be. You can see that it's massive, it was massive. You can see that it's a double-breasted building. You can see that it's well and truly underway. Now, this is in March 1914. Now, it's good that it was well underway at this point for the very simple reason that the First World War is about to start, and all the foreign men are going to get conscripted and go home to fight in their respective armies. So from this great start, this is March 1914, then there's another 6 months elapses while the building is finished off, and not quite finished even then. This is a frustrating part of building. When you build, there's the excitement and there's the frustration. There's the excitement of, I can see it, it's great, it started. And then there's the frustration, it's so slow. Because however fast they do it, it seems slow to you. Take it from me, I've done it a few times. Now, the glass house is the third timber building that Rudolf Steiner created. So we have the Schreinerei, we have the Goetheanum one, which wasn't finished at this point, but the glass house was finished quite quickly. And it's another double-breasted building out of timber with Norwegian slate on the roof. And the glass house, it's not the glass house because Aaron Pfeiffer did his biodynamic experiments there. He did them, but that's not why it's called the glass house. It's because the glass for the Goetheanum and then Goetheanum 2 was arrived at the glass house and it was engraved. And I'll show you that process. I'll show you the result anyway. Slabs of glass would arrive, colored glass, and then brave artisans, including Asit Turgenev, a Russian artist, would grind the glass down so it had shapes into it with dental type drills. So you can think this is an incredibly hazardous exercise and damaging to the house unless you're super duper lucky and careful. In any event, the results are beautiful windows, and the windows were done twice because the first Goetheanum burned down, as you probably well aware. This is the ceiling in the glass house. Now, what's the Schreinerei got to do with this? Well, remember, the Schreinerei is a carpentry shop. So the carpenters in the carpentry shop are working at this kind of stuff. For example, this fine, detailed truss work in the ceiling of the glass house. But not just timber was on Rudolf Steiner's mind when he came to Dornach, but he very quickly began to experiment with different kind of materials, including concrete, which was a good thing that he did that, and we'll see why shortly. But this is his first concrete building. It's the boiler room, and it provided the heat for the Goetheanum in the first place, and it then provided the heat for the Goetheanum in the second iteration. And quite a strange-looking building. And his first experiment. The second experiment in concrete is the house for the dentist that gave the land of the Dornach Hill. Now, this is House Duldeck, and it's right in front of the Goetheanum, so it's in the prized position. You look out the window, there's the Goetheanum. And it was a family house initially, and now it's the Rudolf Steiner archive. So we're talking 1915. So this is proceeding at an incredibly fast pace. If you've done some building, you think, okay, with these dates I'm flashing up, you think, wow, this was unbelievably fast. It was. Partly it was fast because, especially for the Goetheanum, it was when Rudolf Steiner landed in Dornach, he already had the plan. He already had the patrons. So he had the concept. He had a lot of things in place, so he could get off to a running start just because Munich had said, well, we don't like this plan, go away. And he did. 1920, finally, the Goetheanum is opened. It's not quite finished, but you can see in this picture here, the tradies, these tradies are blokes. So where were the women? Well, the women, there'd been a lot of women working on this building, especially during the war when men were quite scarce, the First World War. And they were doing much of the carving inside. So this is a timber building, all timber building, with a massive amount of carving inside, and a massive amount of that was done by women, volunteers. And so the building is now open. It's 1920. It doesn't stay open for very long, by the way. And it wasn't even finished in 1920, the Goetheanum. But Rudolf Steiner pushed on. He designs a transformer. Now, most transformers are pretty ugly, and the best thing is to put a bush in front of them so you can't see them. But here we have a transformer that's designed by a philosopher instead of an engineer. And this is the result. This was the transformer for the Goetheanum, and it's still there, of course. And houses, this is more adventures in building houses. And these houses, there's 3 of these quaint little houses that were built for Eurythmists. They are, I think they look quite quaint. They're quite small. They're quite monastic inside. So it wasn't a life of luxury or for those Eurythmists. They were designed by Rudolf Steiner and Edith Marion together. Now, she was a sculptor, so that was a big asset to the team, having Edith Marion, who was an English sculptor, on the case. And she was also involved in this representative of humanity. It's a very catchy name for this carving. It's a massive carving, and this is a detail, and it's in slabs, so it could be moved about. It's the biggest sculpture in the Goetheanum precinct, and it's still there. It survived the fire. And it was created, of course, in the Schreinerei. Everything was created in the Schreinerei because everything else was under construction, so you can understand. Now, Edith Marion, this is Edith Marion. This is a painting by an Australian artist, Italian, Australian. She was selected as a member of the Vorstand, the managing executive of the Goetheanum, and she was in charge of the School of Sculpture, but she was ill at this time, and so her role was minimal because, as you see, she died quite quickly after that, after the Christmas conference of 23-24. But she played a very important role of making Rudolf Steiner's special space in the Schreinerei his special space, because she was the gatekeeper. So he would disappear into his studio, and maybe he would disappear along with Edith Marion because they were working on projects. But she was the gatekeeper. You wanted to be in, come back tomorrow, come back tonight, whatever. She was the gatekeeper. So she allowed she kept his sanity during those times and gave him space to work. And he was incredibly creative, as you know. Now, on New Year's Eve, 1922, the Goetheanum caught fire, and as you can see, it burned to the ground. It was an all timber building, and what all timber buildings, when they burn to the ground, quite typically. There were fire brigade there, but there was a limited water, and there's a limited fire brigade in 1922. And in any event, the Goetheanum, that prize building of anthroposophy and Rudolf Steiner, disappeared overnight. And the 1st of January, this is what you see, just the concrete plinth. But there was a very important lesson for Rudolf Steiner. He's looking out here, and this is pretty much a view from the Schreinerei. You're looking from the Schreinerei, you're looking at this and you think, well, this tells me that concrete is a good material to build if you don't want it to burn down, if you want it to be permanent. And he did, of course, want it to be permanent. Now, amongst the timber, so there was a very brief time when Rudolf Steiner could deliver lectures in the Goetheanum, but the Goetheanum had this very short life, and he was giving lectures from 1914 to 1924. There were no lectures in 1913 because there was just next to nothing and no space and whatever. So the lectures at Dornach of Rudolf Steiner were from 1914 to 1924. So from the first to the last, they were in the Schreinerei. The last one was the 28th of September, 1924. And here you can see in the picture, you can see that this is Rudolf Steiner in the middle, And there behind him is a stack of timber, and to the right is a stack of timber, and in the foreground is a stack of timber. This is, after all, the carpentry workshop. It's the Schreinerei. It's a shed. And the shed was also host to Eurythmy, because where else? You know, this becomes the performance space. So shift out the carpenters and bring in Eurythmists. So Eurythmy was born, evolved, performed, all in the Schreinerei, including most of the time of the Eurythmy performances at Dornach during Rudolf Steiner's time were in the Schreinerei, as were the lectures. Also was the first class lessons. Now, these were in the last active year of Rudolf Steiner's life. Of all the many lectures, the first class were for the privileged. So they weren't open to the public. If you had a membership card, you didn't get entry to the first class. What you had to do is you had to write to Rudolf Steiner personally and give your reason why you would like to join the first class, a bit like joining a university class, I suppose. And you got accepted or you didn't get accepted, as the case may be. But as you can see, it's a very improvised space, but this was the scene for the first class. The first class was effectively Esoteric Science 101, and it's the first class. There would have been, if history had played out differently, there would have been a second class, and there would have been a third class, like Esoteric 201, etc. But that didn't happen because Rudolf Steiner got sick and he died. So there was only a first class, and nobody's been brave enough or foolish enough or crazy enough to think that they're going to have a second class and a third class, because they're very big shoes to fill of Rudolf Steiner, and nobody's stepped into those shoes. So we are stuck with first class lessons, and that is it. This is Elizabeth Breed. Now, what was her interest in the Schreinerei? Well, she had the foresight to collect Rudolf Steiner material, especially transcripts of all his lectures. So while he was very busy floating about Europe, she was busy collecting, buying, commissioning transcripts of his lectures. And so these were stored in a space within a Schreinerei. She was one of his Rudolf Steiner's favored devotees. He was appointed to the Vorstand, the executive committee, and her background was maths and astronomy. Now, we can say that she's the founder of the Rudolf Steiner archive, but generally she's not going to get that accolade for the simple reason that she was expelled in 1935, along with other women and men, by the way. But so she played a very important role. She was a very interesting lady. She built a house in Dornach, in Alashon. Go and see it. It's still there. It's quite beautiful. This is another product of the Schreinerei, and it's the model of the Goetheanum too. Now, the second Goetheanum, Rudolf Steiner was the first person to see the second Goetheanum, but he saw it only in his mind's eye. And this was his plaster model. This was produced in 1924. So remember, 1924 is the last year of his active life. And this is the build. This is Goetheanum 2 as it's built. So you can see, if we look back here, that's the model. That's the production. It's pretty close. It's pretty good. Now, it was opened in the 29th of September, 1929. So that's a date you might recognize, 29th of September. And at this time, it was open, but it took decades after that to finish. So it was opened in a very preliminary state, but the shell was there, and it's a beautiful shell. Then would bring us to 1924. 1924 was a shocker of a year for Rudolf Steiner because he's poisoned on the 1st of January in a Schreinerei at the get-together of Eurythmy's after party. And his health never recovers from that point. So we're talking the 1st of January. So now we have 9 months of absolutely frenetic work from Rudolf Steiner, but under very, very distressing physical circumstances. And his final lecture is the 28th of September that same year, 1924. So from that 1st of January, there's 9 months. And at that last lecture, he said, there's something happening over my screen here. Let me just see what it is. He said, today, I do not want to let pass without speaking to you at least a few words. That I'm able to do so is due entirely to the loving and devoted care of our friend, Dr. Eurythmy. So she is a very close associate and loved associate. When man has gone through the gate of death, he enters the world of the stars. So Rudolf Steiner was perhaps thinking about this. I have made the effort today to rise up and speak to you, if only these few short words. My strength is not sufficient for more today. So these were the last public words of Rudolf Steiner, and effectively his goodbye to the world. Now in that frenetic 1924, when he was physically stressed, he gave in 9 months 414 lectures. Can you imagine? 414 lectures. There's only 270 days, so it's a frenetic pace. What about the weekends? 70% of those lectures were at the Schreinerei, and then you can see in this pie chart that there were 10 or 11 other places that he traveled to and gave lectures. And the second most popular place was Torquay for giving lectures. That was all one conference. Now, from that 28th of September 1924, Rudolf Steiner retired to his studio. It was his retreat. It's called Atelier is it German? Whatever. He spent 6 months there. And as you can see, it's a very abstemious place. It's if you're looking for comfort, this is not the place to be. But this was his private space. It was basic. It was rudimentary. He was still reading. He was still writing. But he was confined to his sickbed in this very basic space. And this was the very unglamorous entrance to the studio. So if you remember that picture where we had the panorama, you had the, let's say, barn number 1, barn number 2, then coming along, you get to the studio, and this is where the entrance is of the studio here. This is Dr. Eurythmy, and she was also selected by Rudolf Steiner as a member of the Vorstand. Her specialty was medicine. She nursed Rudolf Steiner through not just the 6 months of his sickbed time, but the 9 months of his frenetic period of 1924. Now, she didn't write an account of those times, or if she did, it hasn't surfaced at this point. So she took. So it seems that she took the secrets of that time to her grave. Now, what was Rudolf Steiner actually doing in the studio for 6 months throughout winter? Well, he had a comfortable home. This was his comfortable home. I'm calling it a comfortable home. Have a look. It's a very fine middle class Swiss family home. And it was a marital home. But thinking about it, do you think that Rudolf Steiner was not the first man to retreat to his studio, to his shed, for a bit of solace, for his own personal space and time? And that's what he did. This is the inside of Hans Halsey. As you see, it's comfortable. It's light. It's not terribly spacious, but it's sufficiently spacious. It would be comfortable. But anyway, was not his choice to spend his last time on earth there. This was the nicest house that Rudolf Steiner had ever lived in. So it's interesting to think how he came to choose this abstemious monastic style of 6 months. And it took him through the winter of 24-25, which must have been challenging. And he was cremated. He died in March, at the end of March. So at the end of that 6 months, he was. We can see from his letters that he was hoping that he would recover, and of course, his masses of devotees were hoping he would recover, but that didn't happen. And he was cremated. This is his tombstone, and you see there's a fence. This is a little park. It's in the. You see at the background is the Goetheanum. So he's in the shadow of the Goetheanum, which is fine, and there's a little fence around there. This is a little parked area. And what's the fence doing there? Well, the fence is to keep out the cows because we don't want them to eat my roses in the front there. And so I hope you come to agree with me that the Schreinerei is not just a shed. It's been a witness to the history of anthroposophy from the beginning, because the Anthroposophy Society was founded December 1912 by Rudolf Steiner. So all the history is encapsulated at Dornach and was witnessed by the Schreinerei. As the precinct grew up, as the lectures proceeded, as the Eurythmy performance proceeded, the Christmas conference of 23-24 was in the Schreinerei, and the first class was in the Schreinerei. And added to all that, the Schreinerei is a survivor. After that, well, this is going to be the end of our story, but after that, the Schreinerei continued to be a witness to history, because the Anthroposophy Society, Switzerland, the world had to go through the Depression. There was the Anthroposophy Purge of 1935, there were the Nazi bans of 1935, there was World War II, and so on. But they are beyond the scope of what we're talking about today. And I want to thank you for listening. And I hope you think that the Schreinerei is an interesting building. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much. Yeah, that was it's so helpful to see it as the center of all that building, and then activity and work and life and death, and the way you laid it out really highlighted that. I also appreciated how you highlighted some important women who were doing work and even building in the Goetheanum, and how there's so much beyond what we just look at and see. There's so many other forces, and the Schreinerei is one of those buildings that's really standing there. Does anybody have any? We have a few minutes for questions, so if you want to take down your screen share so we can see everyone, and then feel free to raise your hand with the reaction button in the bottom. You can just raise your hand and we can help you unmute, or you could put a question in the chat.
While we're thinking of some questions, Tess, you mentioned about women. Women were very for Rudolf Steiner. He was a feminist of his day, and when at the Christmas conference he began the executive committee, the Vorstand for the Goetheanum. He chose 4 women and 2 men, and the sequel to that is the women were successively dropped out of that 6 until there were just 2 men standing. So
wow. A lot to think about there. Yeah,
exactly. Edith Marion, she died very quickly, but Ita Wegman and Elizabeth Reed, they were bullied out. And then Mary Steiner was departed as well. Yes. So Rudolf Steiner's chosen team didn't manage to survive the distance. Now, how about questions?
Yeah. So we do have a question from Rod. Hi, Rod.
Hello. Over here in Portland, Oregon, in the United States.
Hi, Rod.
In with you and enjoyed this very much. And I did watch the video with the woman doing the tour. It was fabulous. I can't help want to know what kind of a fire suppressive team or structure is in place today. What protects this lovely structure, even in being concrete? We can see in the news every day. It's crazy world, and I just would hope that there's a system in place, people in place that to take care of it now.
Yes, thanks, Rod. The question is about fire protection for the Goetheanum, the new Goetheanum, the Goetheanum 2. Yes. So you ask for people. Yes. Every event at the Goetheanum is attended by the fire brigade from Dornach. Every. There's a slightly dark story about the fire suppressant because initially, at one point, asbestos was put into the building and it's since been taken out. And asbestos doesn't burn, so you can understand the logic. And at one point, people thought asbestos was the new wonder something or other, which it wasn't. But yes, look, there hasn't been a fire to my knowledge at the Goetheanum, and the electrics are, as I understand, up to date and so forth. Whereas there were in the Goetheanum 1, the electrics were done by volunteers, amateurs. But the Goetheanum 2 is, although it's always financially stressed, and always has been, it's. I think you can say it's fairly safe, and certainly every event is attended by the fire brigade. You won't see them, but they are there. Thank you for the question, Rod. It's a good question.
Thanks, Rod. Yeah, and Mary's asking, how is the Schreinerei used now?
Well, the Schreinerei is still used for lots of things, but it's especially used when you have a conference at the Goetheanum. That's the feeding space. That's the dining hall. So we don't need the Schreinerei as a performance space anymore, and it's not the best performance space, as you probably get we have beautiful performance spaces in the Goetheanum, but it's still used as an overflow for conferences and educational events, and it's still used for as a workshop.
Thank you. Yeah, and Ken has a question.
Ken.
More than a question, I would like to read a little bit from his last address, if I could. This
sure,
appears. This appears in GA 238, which is volume 4 of Karmic Relationships. The last, actually a chapter that's included in that volume. Because this is so, my dear friends, I've made the effort today to rise up and speak to you, if only in these few short words. My strength is not sufficient for more today. May the words so speak to your soul that you receive the Michael thought in the sense of what is a faithfully follower of Michael may feel when clothed in the light rays of the sun. Michael appears and points us to that which must now take place. For it must ever be so that this Michael garment, this garment of light, shall become the words of the world, which can transform the logos of the worlds into logos of mankind. Therefore, my words to you today are these: springing from powers of the sun, radiant spring powers, blessing all worlds. For Michael's garment of rays, ye are predestined by thoughts divine. He, the Christ messenger, revealeth in you, bearing mankind aloft, the sacred will of worlds, yet the radiant beings of ether worlds, to whom your word of light shines forth in cosmic age of spirit man. Ye the disciples of spirit knowledge, take Michael's wisdom beckoning. Take the word of love, of the will of the worlds, into your souls aspiring actively. And that's the end.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you for reading that. And yeah, we considered bringing it in, so I'm glad that you did just now. We just have a couple minutes left for this portion. So I don't know if we can do a speed. Seems like a lot of people all of a sudden have questions. Jorge, can we do a little speed round, lightning round?
Hi, good to meet you finally. I just wondered, I'm glad he brought up the last lecture. I read somewhere that that somehow Steiner's last lecture was going to be made available, or a recording of it, and I just wondered if that would come in an email afterwards, or can we get it anytime today during this one and the AGM, and what's going on with that?
Yeah, we just we did send it by email yesterday, and if you didn't receive it, we'll send it again shortly after this program. So you should be receiving that. Yeah.
That's all.
And that was what we've been reading from. Yeah. Okay.
And the text is available at the Rudolf Steiner archive.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, the name of that is called The Individuality of Elias, John, Raphael, and Novalis. So we'll be sending, yeah, we recorded that by audio, so we'll send that.
That's great.
Thanks.
Okay, Albert.
Hi, I'm Albert Stackman. I'm a member of the New York City branch of the Anthroposophical Society. So first, Dr. John Paull, thank you so much for your presentation. It's exceptionally informative. And I'm also grateful for the reading of that last address, the decimal section. But I have a question to ask in relation to, I guess it's the atelier, the studio. There was a sculpture there. Who was that a sculpture of, and what was Rudolf Steiner's connection with that individual? Could you, if you know, could you share that? Thank you so much.
Yes. Look, there's two figureheads in the studio. One is on the wall, and that's the figure from the carved statue, the representative of humanity. So the one, when you look at the picture, it's on the left, upper left. That's the representative of humanity picture, the Christ figure. And the veiled head is the death mask of Rudolf Steiner.
The white sculpture up on the top is a death mask. Sculpture.
The white sculpture on the left is the head of, or it's a Christ figure from the representative of humanity sculpture.
Thank you for explaining that. I really am grateful. Thank you again.
Glad that we could.
I'll make these slides available and you can just check it out for yourself. But of course, it's from the side. Yeah.
We could probably do a whole 1 hour or more on the sculpture. Okay, Marianne.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes. You could, Marianne.
I simply want to say thank you. This August, I had made arrangements down to the very last bit, having my ticket and made arrangements to sleep there, to go to the Goetheanum, Dornach. And at the last minute, I had sort of a panic attack. And so I put it on a shelf until I could feel better about making the trip. But the fact that it is here and that you presented it, I know now that I'll be comfortable when I go and to see all the things that you have mentioned. And I really appreciate this happening. Thank you.
Thanks, Marianne. You'll have a wonderful time. Get there, spend as much time as you can, and just wander around.
the next time. The
Wonderful.
next time. Yes.
Just do it.
Thank you. I need that. Just do it. I need that. Thank you.
That's your special homework, Marianne.
I needed the Michael encouragement. Thank you.
Yes, yes. And for those of us who can't get there, I'm so glad that this can be something to the tours and the bringing this to life and the way you've described these buildings. It's been very rich and illustrative. So thank you so much, John. And thank you, Marianne. I think we'll close the Q&A. So thank you so much for your time, John. We're so grateful you're here and you shared all of those images and thoughts and words, and it's very good to think of, good to take in on this Michaelmas time, the places that we build and bring strength, and where we can really bring our forces of will to enact on this earth. So thank you for bringing that in.
Thanks, Tess, for inviting me, and thanks for the good questions, and enjoy the rest of your AGM.
Thank you, John. So I just wanted to, after all of that, I thought it might be nice to just take a moment of pause and think about all we've heard about this building that we might not have heard so much about, something that has been always there and always present, but maybe not illustrated in such a way that we have done today. And thinking back into your own lives, we won't have a chance to go into breakout rooms, but I want to take this in. There's a lot of homework on this session, so take this into your imagination of something that was a surprising teacher, a surprising source of wisdom, a surprising source of creativity in your life. Maybe you had your eye on something and you were heading in a direction and there was a goal, and then something else in your environment or a person or a course or an actual physical structure could come in and be a source for you that you did not expect. And it was didn't come in it as John mentioned, the ugly duckling. It might not have come in the most beautiful wrapping or the most grand presentation, but something in your life that kind of surprised you as the depth of it unfolded over time. And so take that into your sleep tonight to think about that. And you might be surprised with what you find. So yeah, Angela's putting that in the chat. Think of your own little shed in your life. So we'll close with Eurythmy. I'll bring Mary back.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the first time I ever went, I stayed in the Eurythmy houses. So Eurythmy it's a beautiful place. Hope everybody can go there. This gesture, this special gesture, it goes so well with the verse that Aunt Angela read at the beginning, because my left hand comes and lifts up my heart and lifts that up my head. This gesture of wisdom. And picture this helmet. You know how St. Paul speaks of his armor of goodness, right? And picture your helmet of wisdom. So let's just do the images of Michael as the captain of the angels again, starting with the firmness of the earth, right? And our uprightness. Firmly on the earth I stand, Michael's sword in my hand. Put on the armor of God. Gird yourself with the belt of truth. We're the shining shield of goodness. Our head, the helmet of spiritual wisdom. And peace, let flow through our body into our feet, so we can walk with the angels of Michael. We can walk all the way with the angels to our AGM. And feel the earth below, sky above, and find our inner balance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Tess.
So glad you've all joined us today. And yes, in about 45 minutes, we will be meeting for our AGM. So those of you, I think many of you signed up for both. So I hope to see you there as well. And thank you for coming to this members Michaelmas time. We are so grateful to you and so glad to be part of this community. I wish you a very strong and enlivening Michaelmas time. And until soon, see you soon. I'll let you unmute and we can all say goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Many thanks.
Thank you.
you.
Goodbye, everybody.
Much appreciated.
Goodbye, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
So long.
Bye.
See many
Thank
familiar
you.
faces. Good to see you all.
I just feel like I went to Switzerland real quick.
Yeah, right?
By way of Tasmania.
Oh, that was great to see all that.
Happy Tuesday to you, John. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
He's in the
Tess,
future.
is the meeting at this same link?
It actually is. I'm probably going to close the room and then reopen it, but we'll be meeting here. Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.